Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, Widowhood. Our guest today, Pam Baker, is going to talk to us about some essential information that she learned after the passing of her husband, John. The book that we're going to cover today, Where the Keys to the Safe. I mean, she didn't know where the keys were. This is not like a fictitious title. She did not know where the keys were to the safe when her husband died. And Pam found out there was so much more that she didn't know. And she doesn't want other people to struggle about things that they don't know when someone that they love passed. This book and this conversation is not just for widows and widowers. This is for anyone that's alive and needs to plan for the people that will be here after they leave. Or maybe you have people in your family that you're wanting to support and needed to understand their plan. This is a conversation for you. And also the idea of her group that she has for women who whine, widows who whine, you want to hear about this. This is something that you may be able to connect with where you're at in your location. Let's get into this conversation now. Hello, Pam. Welcome to the Widowhood.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
I mean, thank you for having me in the Widowhood. I mean, like when you
I know, that's weird.
I like, okay, yeah. Let's back up. Like, what does that mean? Like, yeah, come on. When you go, well,
weird.
And how, yeah.
You know, it's so funny. And I know we're going to jump. We're like jumping, but it's so funny because I've talked to you about my group, Widows Who Whine, and it's a social group, and I do once a month I'll do a welcome. We have a private Facebook group, and I'll do a welcome to everybody, like, welcome to, then I'm like, wait, I do that every single time because I want to be like warm and inviting, but then I'm like, but that's weird, like, welcome to the tribe, so yeah, totally.
And so what is the name of your group and what do you guys do? Since we're there, let's talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'll just back up a little bit. My husband passed away November of 2021, and he had brain cancer, and I couldn't find my way in the widow world. I couldn't find my way in the grief world because every grief group I tried felt like people were kind of stuck there. Didn't feel like they were trying to figure out how to move through it. Okay. And live with it in a healthy way. To me, it just didn't resonate. So I actually hired my own grief counselor, like a private one-on-one a certified grief coach. Okay. And I still work with her, actually worked with her today. And she's like more of a life coach now, but the grief still hits when it hits. And
yes.
So that was November 2021. He passed away in February of 2023. I kept seeing on our local mom groups, Facebook pages, women who were widowed, or they'd come on there and say, "Oh, I just lost my husband," or "My sister just lost her husband." Where are the resources? And every time it was those same resources that didn't really resonate with me, and they may with them, right? But I was like, it was like frustrating me. So I decided, there needs to be something else. It's not like, at that point, you realize that when you get back out into life after your person dies, your couple friends, you're kind of like the third wheel from then on, and they're great, and it's fine, but it's just not the same. And then your single friends are like, I don't want to say jaded. They're like talking bad about their exes and how much they suck and all that. And that doesn't really feel right either. So there's like the space was like awkward. And so I started this group. I decided I'm going to start this group, and it's going to be based on your social network, like your social people. So you have people to hang out with who have that same shared experience, and they don't have the, I always make fun of the head tilt and the "how are you?" and that whole thing that drives people, I say me, crazy. And so, you just get it because they're walking the same path, right? And so I wanted it to give that social vibe. So I call it Widows Who Wine, WINE, not HINE, and Widows Who Wine. And just I put it on my Facebook page and said, anybody want to come over to my house? And 14 women showed up that very first night. And I knew of a couple of them. I knew one, and then I knew of a few others. And so I just decided I'd keep putting it out there, and I'd organize one social event a month. And that's what I did. Everything from axe throwing to wine tasting to pottery to sometimes we do educational things and home maintenance 101 and financial planning 101, et cetera. And then it just has grown and grown and grown. And now there's over 350 women in it in the Atlanta area. And all kinds of offshoots: widows who travel, widows who dine, widows who golf, widows who poker, widows who mahjong. There's everything. It's awesome. And just to plug this for a second, I because so many people reached out to me around the country, they said, is there anything like that in my area for my mom, my sister, my best friend? Now it's almost 2 years, I've been developing this app, Widows Who Wine app, to basically it's kind of modeled after just like a dating app where you just find the widows in your area. So if you're traveling, you can be like, oh, I wonder if there's any widow events. And, it's in the app stores, but I'm kind of a perfectionist and I don't love it yet. So I haven't really fully launched it, but when it goes, it's going to be really super fun because you can create events and just, build your whole tribe in your own area. So exciting.
Wow. Okay. We have to circle back. Your husband's name?
John Baker. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
You opened your home and let whosoever show up at your house.
Yes.
Okay, you're laughing. And what was your family thinking or other friends that, and I say this from a perspective but go ahead and answer this. I'll tell you, but I want to circle back to my husband died and I let anybody come to my house. Let's talk about that. How did that land with other people that knew you?
I think that it was not out of character. It was not out of character because I've been accused of being a collector of heartbeats, and I have a house that's full of people and full of animals like all the time. So there's always someone extra like staying with me, I have friends who have stayed with me for times. My relatives come in and out. I had my niece from Vermont come, and she went to school down in Atlanta for a year and a half, and she stayed with me. There's always extra heartbeats. So I don't think anyone was shocked by it. I laughed because if I were invited to that, there's no way I would have gone. There's no way. So I'm very comfortable bringing people in, but I'm not as comfortable going out.
Your husband dying, our spouse is dying, put you in a place that will crave connection with other people that understand this journey from the same perspective.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, when my husband Mark passed, a coworker introduced me to their cousin. At the time I was living in Pennsylvania, their cousin was living in California. Her and I had spoke a couple of times, and there was a widow retreat in her area.
Oh.
I got on the plane from Pennsylvania to California, stayed one night with my sister who lived relatively close. We met this woman halfway, like right off the road. I jumped out of my sister's car and into her car, sight unseen. My sister's taking pictures of the license plate and different stuff, and I was gone. And another day I was talking about, they were like, yeah, that was scary.
That was crazy.
But even though my family has amazingly supported, talking to someone else who I knew had a grasp of how I was feeling was very different than conversations with people that were leaning in to understand. So I could see, but I think you may have shown up to someone else's home because this drives you to something in a way that nothing else ever has for me.
Yeah, that's true. And, I've told this story in many times, but it's one of my greatest examples of exactly what you're talking about. there's a widows who book club, and I only plan the one thing, and I tell everybody, this is your group, it's not my group, it's our group, and do what you want. Like, if there's not already something happening, create it. And I try to support all of those things and go, and I love book club anyway, so I go to that one. And one night I was there, and people don't necessarily know my face from the group, they know my name, but I was there, and this woman walked in, and I hadn't met her yet, and she started crying as she walked in the door at book club. And so I went up to her and I was like, what's happening right now? Like, talk to me. And she said, I've been a widow for 10 years. And this is the first time I feel like I can breathe. And I was like, ooh, like that tells you right there. I tell that story all the time because it's the perfect example of exactly what you're talking about. Just being with people who get it. And there's no false pretense. There's no mask that you have to wear in front of those people. It's just you, and you can just be you, and they understand. We understand. It's huge.
It is life altering for that woman that had been in that for 10 years. Society has placed this stigma that though we are sad, though we are not thrilled about the situation, but our existence should not stop. I should not stop thriving. I should not stop having dreams, hopes, aspirations, community, and connection. But when society gives us this concept that we should be tucked away and never show pleasure or anything else because that's honoring my spouse and that's being a good widow, you feel trapped. And to realize I don't have to be trapped, and there are other people that will allow me to say that out loud, I invite people to seek community because community has a way of rubbing off on us in ways that we never thought of, because you only know as much as you know in your head. And we know that's not always a lot. And there are other people around us learn more. So I am excited for every woman that connects with you. And it's amazing.
Well, it has been really amazing. It is my greatest gift. I know people tell me all the time, literally almost every day, these women come to me and say, you saved my life. And then, and they in return have saved my life because it has given me so much joy that I was not experiencing in my life after my husband died. And it's just brought these friendships. And I always say to people, when they say, what is this group all about? And I'm like, it's about finding the best friends you never knew you needed. And they do. They become your best friends because it's just an easy friendship, and it's I don't know, it's just exactly what you said. People think that when you become a widow, your life, your story is at the end. And just because his story ended doesn't mean ours has to end as well. Because so many of us were not the, 85-year-old woman sitting in the rocking chair, being thankful for having a great life. We have great lives. And I'm grateful for all the time I had with my husband. And I'm grateful I met him when I was 18 because I got extra time with him. But it's, for so many of us, it's hitting in the middle of our lives. It's not hitting at the end of our lives. And I think that's the biggest misconception of widowhood is the visual. It's that visual that people have and that they still think it's like that antiquated version of what a widow is and who we are. And it's not. And with all of that path back to joy becomes the complicated feelings and emotions, right? Because are we allowed to feel joy? It's like what you were alluding to. Are we allowed to? Because do you feel like you're dishonoring and not honoring your husband by then being happy? Or the people are like, oh, I guess she's over it. Look at her laughing over there, and that feels weird and complicated too. You don't, because there are those judgments. We know that. It's true.
No, never.
So there's so much. That's why I always kind of refer to the many layers of masks that we have to wear as widows. And that's one of them is not being allowed to feel joy because we're going to be judged for being happy again, while we're also sad. You can be, you can grieve, you can still, the grief never goes away. Like I said, you can still live with the grief and also live a happy life. So it's, goes back to that figuring out how to live with the grief in a healthy way. That's step one. You gotta process and figure out how to manage that grief. And, but it is 100% okay. And acceptable to then go on to live a happy life.
Thank you. What would you say to someone who says that's just a lot of trauma bonding, just people getting together, crying and being sad all the time? You need to have real friends. What would you say to a person with that disposition?
That is such a great question, because when I started this group, my brother-in-law, love him to death. I mean, he was one of my husband's best friends. He was so worried that I was going to get stuck. He's like, you're choosing to be stuck in this place. You're choosing to be stuck in this grief. And to me, it's not. Like, to me, I'm not stuck at all. Like, and I'll give you another example. It's so crazy. I had this one woman join, and every now and then I'll do like a new member meet and greet, because we don't sit around and share our stories. You know, we support each other when the grief hits, but we're not a grief group, right? We're drinking wine and having fun and going places and doing things. But when it hits, we support one another. But every now and then, I try to do it once a quarter. I'll do a new member meet and greet kind of social. And we do share our stories in that space. And it does feel a lot more like a grief circle. But one woman was sitting there, and she literally looked like deer in the headlights, shell-shocked. And she told her story, and she said, she'd been a widow for, I think, about 2 years at that point. And she said, I feel like a shell of a person. I just wander around my house by myself, aimlessly. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm living, not even living a life. I'm surviving. I'm barely surviving. Well, fast forward yet again at book club. She walks in, a little bit, I don't know how much time had passed, maybe a year. Tropical shirt on. She's like radiating, glowing joy. And I was like, girl, what is happening? What are you doing with yourself? You look amazing. You're like, just like, pow, full of life. And she was like, I just got back from a trip with my cousin, and we're doing like, she was just like so happy. And it was, just, I think, being able to connect with people and process and do and show and have people who are walking that same path again, show you that it is okay. You can get yourself back out there. You can, and you have somebody to do it with that isn't going to head tilt, who isn't going to be the third wheel, who isn't going to be, talking about their exes, who may very well be horrible. You can talk about them, but that, you know what I mean? That's not, you do feel like an out of place person in that circumstance when you're the one that's single, that's, widowed, not like divorcing your ex. So, so what I would say is, it's definitely not, you're just finding people that just get it, and that are just easy to have a relationship with, and then go do all these things that will bring you joy. I mean, we have a group of us going to Costa Rica in October that we just formed our Widows Who Travel, Widows Who Travel group.
Writing that down.
Yeah. I mean, we do so many fun things. It's awesome.
I heard going forward, living, having companionship, not the dating thing. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes people say, well, you need to get back out there, you need to live. They automatically equate that to dating. Yeah. What I hear this is equating this to living.
Yeah, that's really a good point. I never thought of it that way. I mean, incidentally, I did put together a Widows Who Want to Date Someday workshop, because that's also hard, some people, me included, you haven't flirted. I mean, like, you sort of flirt with your husband, but, flirted or dated or done any of those things in decades.
Girl, okay, I'm going to stay focused with yes to all. But the idea that this is a group of ladies being friends.
Yes, just
and
being
hanging out and not having to make dating the criteria.
Right. Because it's the loneliness and there is across the country. I think in COVID, we saw it really, really hard with the loneliness pandemic, and it just goes forward. Right. And if you just have those people that you can call, and it takes away that dependency on a man, or it's typically a man, to fill that void for you. You don't need to fill that void. And I think when you're only dialed in on that concept, as it has to be I have to replace this void with another man, you're apt to rush into something that might not be the best choice for you. And you feel like that pressure to fill the space. And,
I want to ask you one thing. You actually dived in, you said a man or a woman. So there are widows that may have had wives that are open and welcome to come to your group. And to be clear about that, because that can be another place where people feel awkward, that they're not understanding that someone would welcome them because their widow experience does not look like theirs. So thank you for kind of touching on that.
Well, and I'll take that one step further, because I've had this discussion with other women, and women who have been engaged and lost their person, women who have had a long-term partner that aren't married or engaged who lost their partner. You know, all of that to me qualifies you as being a widow. You know,
Okay.
I hate that word, but you know what I'm saying. You're still
No, and this is a space for people who have lost a life partner, and that may look different for everyone, but you are welcome here. And that's important as people are listening to this conversation and they're wrapping up their wine bottle, trying to figure out how they feel. You want to make sure that they feel welcome. Thank you.
Sure.
What is something that you least expected in this experience that you have endured?
Least expected. That's a good question.
It could be with your widow journey or with the women who won, however you want to phrase that.
Well, I will say I'll go back to my widows who whine, because I honestly didn't expect to almost have my whole friend group pivot to the widows. You know, they are the people I choose almost always. I have my best friend circle from college. I have a couple of close friends, you know, that are still like, were part of my couple friends, but literally in any social circumstance, it's like, I'm going to them first, you know, like, oh, they are the ones I want to hang out with. They are the ones that are just easy and fun and get it. And I guess probably because we're together a lot, you know, even, and I will say, like, the women going to the Costa Rica trip, we tend to have like the widows who dine, the widows who book club. They're all like separate pockets of the women, right? You find your space, you find your circle, right? Each of us find our circle. And I won't even, I'm not going to say cliques, because that sounds so high school-y. It's your circle that you're going to be naturally more comfortable with. There are people that are going to be naturally drawn to similar things that you like, right? And the Costa Rica trip is very interesting. I'm so excited for it, because it is like a couple people from this group, a couple people from this group, a couple people. It's really cool. I think that's going to be fun. So I'm not really answering your question, but I would say that I guess that would be the thing that surprises me the most, is that these women have really become my core group. Yeah.
Take that as that's an answer. I'll check on that.
Okay, good.
You talk about book club and finding your group. How did you find yourself to write a book after John's passing?
Okay, so John was a financial advisor and had his own business, and he was very, very successful. He had brain cancer, so his chances were not great for survival. We kept our hope alive with it, and he lasted twice as long as he was given, and I'm grateful for that. But my point being, we had time to plan for it. He was a financial advisor. We had our own lawyer. We had our own CPA. We had team. I had his whole people at his office, right? And when he died, I always say the business of death. The business of death was still really hard. And I was like, if it's hard for me, when I had 3 years to plan, and a husband who is in the finance world, and a lawyer and a CPA, how do women or anybody who loses someone handle it when their partner or their person just, you know, gets in a car accident and dies, or has a heart attack? And it's just like, how do they do it? So that was the catalyst for the book, because I was like, I don't know. I just got I felt so compelled to find a way to make it easier for people to learn the lessons that I learned the hard way. And so much of it, as I'm sure you know, you don't know until you know, right?
Exactly.
And so that's why that's what was the catalyst for it. And I named it, Where's the Key to the Safe? Because I didn't even know where the key to our safe was. I didn't know. And so I'm like, what the hell? Like, how do I not know? And then I couldn't get into it. And he always told me, you got to figure out how to get into the safe. I was like, no, I don't. You know how. I don't need to know. Not a
okay. And so we have the name of the book, all the keys here. Who is Cameron?
Cameron is my nephew, who is also a financial advisor. He worked for my husband, and my husband was actually his father figure. And so he went through the whole post-death process with me. And because he worked at the office, he knew, you know, all the players and did all the things. And so when I was wanting to write this book, I was like, I can offer stories, but I can't offer professional perspective. So I literally, he jokes about this all the time. I made him write it. I made
so
him
you
come.
hijacked him into this book, I think.
I did.
Yes.
And so he came on reluctantly, but he did a beautiful job. He did such a good job. And I wanted it to be very like you're sitting down with your girlfriend, having a cup of coffee, and really easy to understand. And so everything about it, I read a lot of finance books after John died because I wanted to be educated. And they're all clinical and cold and boring. Well, everything about ours is like the cover is warm. The font is meant to be easy to take in. We had one of Cameron's friends, actually, Sydney, do the illustrations. And just everything about it is meant to be really aesthetically pleasing, warm, inviting, including the vibe, which I got pushback from the proofreaders and the editors all the time. They didn't like my writing style. And I was like, I want it to feel like you're sitting down with me having a cup of coffee. So we cover everything in there, from like where to keep your passwords, how to...
I'm gonna get no. You mentioned having a financial advisor, having an accountant, having a lawyer, having a CPA. If I'm a widow and I don't have any of those things, and that sounds like really outside of my league, why is this helpful for me?
So that's okay. So with the book, we also created a workbook to go along with it. And you take, each chapter covers something. So whether it's how much car insurance should you have?
I'm sorry, since she just keeps going there before us, let me read the table of contents here.
Sorry.
Okay, the first section is Dear Reader. Chapter 1, How Did We Get Here? Chapter 2, The Bare Minimum. Chapter 3, Teamwork Makes the Dream Work, Building Your Professional Team. Chapter 4, Risky Business, The Ins and Out of P&C Insurance. Chapter 5, From Crutches to Coffins, Disability and Life Insurance. Chapter 6, Passwords, Financials, and Deeds. Oh my. Chapter 7, Designing Your Cash Flow Like a Pro. Chapter 8, Life After Death. Chapter 9, Taxes, the ABCs of RMDS. Chapter 10, Ensuring Your Business Lives On After You're Gone.
There you go. Thank you.
And I have a few places I want to land at.
Okay.
But just overarching for that widow that's hearing a trip to Costa Rica, all these other things. She's like, I don't have all of that. Why would this be of interest to her?
Well, and I'll say the number one...
Or him, a widower too.
Yeah. And it's actually not even just it's for anybody who has a financial link to anyone else. So it could be for your parents, your siblings, your children. Like, get it together. I'll have it together so my kids don't have to deal with all this stuff when I die. And so it's any financial link. And I think that the number one mistake that people make is they think, I have a will, I'm good. And the will is really meant as your backup plan. And then people think, I don't have a lot. I don't need an estate plan. Your estate plan is what keeps you out of probate. It's what keeps your, what you have accumulated, no matter what it is, no how small or big, throughout your lifetime. And you get to decide where it goes, not the government when it goes through probate, not the people who come out of the woodwork who want a piece of your pie because they're kin of some sort. You avoid probate. That's the probate pitfalls in the subtitle. You avoid those probate pitfalls because if it's done right, it never goes to probate. It doesn't matter how.
And so this, how to avoid probate pitfalls and maximize family finances. What is probate and why do I not want to be there?
So when your estate, essentially anything is an estate, it goes to probate because you don't have your plan set up legally to avoid probate. It goes to the government. It gets processed through the government. So once it goes in probate into the legal system, it's public knowledge. Anybody who wanted to look you up, Pam Baker, look her up. Anybody, I could have, my third cousin from Oklahoma could be like, oh, I want a piece of that pie. I'm kin. Give me some of that. And they can stake a claim. And so probate is when it just has to go through the court system and then gets divvied up. If you plan accordingly, and that includes your children, for the record. Like I even had, and I don't even know why, but I know why, it's something we missed. I'm a stay-at-home mom my whole life. I'm a caregiver. I have like an outstanding reputation in our community. Do you know that in Georgia, my kids, because I had 2 minors, 2 of my 4 were still minors, I had to go have some person I don't know, I had to pay them to go on my behalf to probate to prove I was a good enough guardian to take care of my own children after my husband died. And I'd been a stay-at-home mom for 20 years. And that was a part of the process that we didn't know. We didn't have that in our plan. So that's horrifying example. And I was
Oh my
like,
gosh, it is. And I was going to ask because somebody made me listen to go, well, I've been a stay-at-home mom. I'm the only spouse. There's no one that's going to challenge this. Why is this important to me? And you answered that question before I even had a time to express it. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say before I get into a couple of pieces of the book that I'm interested in sharing?
No, I just want to reiterate it that it's literally for anybody, and that the other thing I hear all the time is, I'll be dead, why do I care? You know, to me, it's like the best gift you can give to anybody that you are linked to and that you love. Like, set up your stuff beforehand, because what happens is when you lose that person, you're left putting the pieces together, or making really important decisions while also in a fog of grief.
Yes.
And it's impossible. It's impossible to make solid I barely remember that whole first year. I don't know about you, but I really don't have a lot of memories of that first year. And you're trying to decide what's going to happen with all of your financials, all of your kids, whatever. It's impossible. So you don't want to bestow that upon anybody else, but you also want to have yourself set up so that you don't have to go through that yourself.
I would agree. That first year is a bit skittish. So the section that says, "Dear reader," the portion I want to read what I have here, and then if you would share what comes to mind for you.
Sure.
I couldn't stop thinking about how to make this whole death thing easier for the masses to manage, and ultimately decided that writing a book would be the best way to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I can tell as many people as I want, right? I can tell the story, but until it's out to people that are beyond my immediate circle, they're not going to hear my story. And then by bringing Cameron into it, you're not just getting the story and being like, oh, that's a story I can learn from. Storytelling is where it's at. You know, that's why there's podcasts, right? We're storytellers. But you need that professional experience to go along. That's why Cameron's voice is so important in there too, because you're really getting that step-by-step instruction on how to be top-notch setup.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Chapter 1, how did we get here? On November 12th, 2021, I lost my husband, John. I had been married for 24 years, but we were together for 32. After meeting in my freshman year in college, John was a financial advisor and owned his own company. He was really good at his job, and because of that, he built a very successful practice. Mm-hmm. Who was John when you met him in your freshman year?
Well, I'll tell you the funniest story. I had work study on campus, and I worked for campus activities. So I was in the campus activities office, and John was big into volleyball. And he came in one day and, had his we were in Florida. So he had his neon shorts on and ready, all the stuff. And I was just like, what? He was a junior, I was a freshman. And I just remember looking at him like starry-eyed, like, oh my God. And my boss, who had also gone to Equated, he had graduated a few years before. And I was like, who was that? And he was like, no, you don't want to go there. So I was like, why? Of course, that made me go, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Which was hilarious, because for some reason I could say I was being snowed, but he had a reputation as being a player. But when I actually got to know him, he actually wasn't a player. He was popular and people really liked him. And, that's what they thought. He had a girlfriend at home, when I met him. And yep.
Wow. That is a beautiful story. When you think of other things about John and people share things about him, do you like for people to share John's stories with you?
I love it. And I will say that's one of the weirdest things, I think, when you lose someone, is people stop talking about them. Yes. And when they talk about them, they only talk about the best version. And we all have our moments of not being the best. So I found I was at out one time, and my neighbor, actually, I hadn't seen my neighbor in a while, and he came up to me and he started talking about John. He'd had a couple drinks, but then he said something, he was like, oh my God, remember when John, I just remember when he did this. And he was like, he was such an a-hole. And I was like, I literally high-fived him. I was like, thank you for saying that, because he was, he could be, that wasn't who he was at his core, but he had moments like, that's why he was good at business. He could go when he needed to go. Okay. And so he had some edge he was also, he coached everything, and everybody loved him, but he had his moments. And I just appreciated that so much, that it was just a real true memory of maybe not John's best quality, but to me it was like real. And I was like so happy that he shared that with me. So I love hearing the stories, and I encourage it. I love it. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, because as you said, people often try to not mention their name or just say all these good things. But I have found more often than not, we want to hear the stories of them. We think of them all the time. It's not like you mentioned their name is now going to make me sad. There's a part of me, though I'm laughing and living and experienced life, and there's a part of me that's missing them.
Yeah.
And so you invoking their name is not going to make it some horrible situation. What would you say to that?
I think that is so true. And, I don't know if I told you this, but I actually just started this podcast that I'm calling The Lost Love Stories. And it's exactly for that reason, because people don't have a space. I wanted to create a space for people who have lost someone they love to share their story, and in a way archive it. But I also want it to be a place where you can talk about the real stories. So my prompters are like, tell me how you met, like tell me about what you just did, your first thoughts, your first meetings, whether it's your spouse or your best friend or anybody that you care about, and then tell me your favorite memory, and then but also tell me some of the times that they drove you nuts. Like talk to me about when they really pissed you off or whatever it is, what I mean. And then end with like, okay, let's talk about how you've managed that grief and how you've found your way, or have you found your way back to joy. And let's talk about that. So Jake, my 23-year-old he is my first guest. And he lost his dad, but we're not focusing on that. We're focusing on his best friend. His best friend, Blake, died in a snowboarding accident 6 months before my husband died. So wow. Jake lost both of those people in a very short period of time. And I want to open with that as my first official guest, because it will obviously be very heavily widow based, because I have so many people in that world, but right. I want it to be something that young people can use as a helpful tool or a helpful space, for healing, but also sharing. So I'm excited about that. But I've literally just recorded my intro episode, and then I recorded one with Jake, but we had too much reverb, I think, because he was in my downstairs office, I was in the upstairs, and I think we were reverbing on each other. So we're going to re-record this week when I see him, and then that'll be my first
nice
guest. Yes, but it's exactly what you're talking about, because it's so important to keep those stories alive, and if that's where people can come and have their story archived, that's the space that I'm
excellent. I'm looking forward to hearing this conversation. Chapter 5, From Crutches to Coffins, Disability and Life Insurance. Let's talk about this title.
That was actually Cameron's suggestion. He liked that because it's like all the things in between with and I think I just said to him the other day, I need to go reread that book, because we read it 5 million times. When you write a book, but you're reading in chunks. Right. I don't know that I've ever read it from start to finish, and I need to do that. But that is like covering all those things you don't think about. Disability, I can't remember if it's all chunked in the same chapter, but how important disability is, how important umbrella policies are, all the things that cover you. Even car insurance. Do I have enough car insurance? You think, oh, I'll save some money by, getting this cheaper policy, but then you get in an accident. I never thought about these things until Cameron, quite frankly, we were writing this book. And we do workshops too. We just did one 2 nights ago. And it was he's in this group called Tomorrow's Leaders, and it's like young professionals. So we were speaking to that group. And so it's very different than, somebody of our age group, where they're just starting out with the savings and, getting renter's insurance instead of homeowner's insurance and stuff like that. But it was fun listening to Cameron really dial in with that that age demographic, to really talk about the differences between what all the different house insurance and renters insurance, how to take advantage of what your company might offer for disability, and all of the plannings and HSAs and all the ways you can do. His was really like how to start saving from a young age and set
And that
yourself
just really expands the idea that this book is for people. This may have been leveraged from your widow experience, but this is a tool for anyone. I'm going to read a couple of different sections in this chapter, and then I'll just let you comment. And you may have actually just covered some of that. Life and disability insurance is your lifeline when the unthinkable happens. Life insurance can have many purposes. You can use life insurance as a tax-free investment vehicle, a way to pass assets to your heirs tax-free, or a contingency plan if you own your own business. Insurance companies, in the most basic sense, operate in the same way. They offer you different types of life insurance policies at various prices. These policies have different time frames or benefits, and therefore different odds that they will be profitable for you in a designated way.
Yeah. So there are so many things to consider. And when you're considering that young professional group again, versus, someone who's in their 40s versus 50s versus 70s, what are the different types of things? When do you need that life insurance? Cameron was just saying this to the group the other night. They don't really need the life insurance right now. Life insurance policies are meant to be a source of income for the people you leave behind. You don't have a family yet. You don't have a spouse. You don't really need to have that expense right now, but you do want to get it before something health-wise comes along that will exclude you from getting life insurance in the future. And then all the different types of insurance, the universal and the terms and all that. All of it is so dependent on what stage you are in your life and what kind of assets you want to have to pass on. And things that we're talking about with that, like as a it can get really complicated, and Cameron does a
And no, I want to keep it very topical, but just the introduction of that, and also hearing the way that you're writing, going back to the ways you said you wanted it to sound comfortable. I wanted them to be able to hear life insurance. That sounds like a regular conversation, as you mentioned. The idea that this is not needing to have a financial background. This is for people, talking to people about real life things.
Yeah, and what I love that we sort of did it after, it was an afterthought, but it was a great afterthought, is at the end of every chapter, there were reflective questions. So there's like a summary of reflective questions. And then those reflective questions are meant to guide you for whatever stage you're at, to know, okay, I got to go in this direction. Oh, I got to go in that direction. So that's what that whole thing is, to let you know, like, this is the path to follow. If this applies to you, then do this. It's like, I'm remembering those books that we used to read, like, if you want to choose this book, go that way. But it is really you based on, that's why if you do it along with that workbook, you can really have a full, complete plan that you literally can take to a lawyer and have it not be cookie cutter, have it be very personally based, and have a full plan in place, and just get this legalize this document, give your workbook over and legalize this document, and you're good. You're set,
Thank you. In the very beginning of the book, it said the unthinkable happened. Why is it so hard to just say that we have a timeline, that when I am no longer here, when my death, my transition from this world happens, it is a thing that I think we think about that we don't want to talk about, that we do think about. And the chapter here, chapter 8, life after death, that it's okay to think about that. There's nothing wrong with my spouse left me life insurance so I could continue living. Is it hard to redeem it? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with the concept of planning to live after your spouse passes, or your loved one that has done this. It's not like you did something ulterior motives to make this happen and put yourself in this situation. This is what it was set up to be and to do. So this chapter, Life After Death, it says this chapter is essentially a checklist of all the things that you need to be done once your person passes away. You spoke earlier about trying to operate with this mental fog, and now to know that a checklist would exist to be able to help navigate that. What does that look like for the reader And I want to read a section, well, two parts, and then whatever comments you would like to share.
Okay.
Bonus box. While meal trains are a lovely idea, I find them overwhelming and guilt-inducing. Food delivery gift cards offered our family a very welcome break from the endless supply of pasta dishes and casserole. And from Cam, which I thought was very interesting. Before John passed away, I had helped numerous clients through the death of the loved one, but I was not prepared for the amount of work the family has to do. I had not been privy to until I walked through this with Pam. Even in the most straightforward estate plans, it can be too much for one person to tackle themselves. No matter how much you prepare for the passing of a loved one, the months following their death is always chaotic. An unfortunate reality is that most people pass quickly without giving their family time to prepare adequately. And I think we kind of ended where we started in the necessity of that. What would you like to share in those sections?
Well, first, I want to go back to the unthinkable because I think that when you ask people, obviously we all think about our death at some point, but we don't really want to think about it. So we go through a good chunk of our lives feeling invincible. It's not going to happen. We have plenty of time. We don't have to talk about that right now, right? And so that, I think that's what makes it such an uncomfortable conversation. And that's what I say to people all the time. We are all going to die. We are. So why are we so afraid of this conversation? And just because we're saying it out loud doesn't mean we're speeding up the clock. We're not like wishing for it to happen. We're not like, putting
I didn't jinx myself because I said that.
Yeah, right. And it's so interesting because just the other night at our workshop, and this was again, the young professionals, one of the attendees said that she has tried to talk to her parents about their plan just so she knows what's going on. So she's prepared. And because she said, how do I talk to my parents? Because every time she tries, they say, oh, do you just want to see how much money you're going to get? Is that what you're after? Like, you just want to know what's coming to you and make sure we don't spend it all? Like, there's such a weird dynamic in so many different situations, right? It's money is a weird dynamic, and then death is a weird dynamic, and all of this, when really it's just like, let's all get on the same page. So we have a solid plan in place and everybody knows their role. And in that, what Cameron's alluding to is how chaotic and overwhelming it is. We go through this whole thing in there about picking the players on your team. Like, we have a whole team concept, whether it's the executor, the guardian, the power of attorney, all those different things that we need in case of emergency, in case of accident, in case I get in a car accident and I'm in a coma. Who's gonna make these decisions? Who's gonna keep paying my bills so I don't come out and I'm in a ton of debt, or everything's being repoed because I haven't paid my bills? Who are those people? You got to plan ahead, and you got to tell them that you've chosen them and have the conversation so they know. I hear that all the time, that people just don't tell the people. But also, then the players on your team that are the person who's going to say, oh, okay, I'll contact the funeral home for you. Okay, I'm going to reach out and start this meal train, or let everybody know. My sister did that. We went through many stages, of course, as you can imagine, with cancer, that we got meal trains. And that's why by the time John actually died, we were done with the casseroles, done with the everything. Like, and you do feel, I felt guilty. Like, if any of the food got thrown away or anything, I was like, oh my God, I just feel bad. Somebody took the time to do this. But when we started getting, I said, I just wish we had Uber Eats or, any of those where, each kid could just get what they want. Like, I don't know what you feel like eating. None of us do. We're all grieving. I might want Thai food. You might want pizza. I don't know. And that just made life so much easier because people could just get what they want when they wanted it. And you didn't have these dishes like staring at you, like, eat me. And so that's all part of it. And just having that whole like proactive conversation about these are the players. These are the way it's going to go. And again, going back to like normalizing the conversation. This isn't meant to say, I hope you hurry up and die so I can get your stuff. It's
exactly.
Let's make a plan so that when you do, or I do, or anybody does, we can spend our time honoring and sitting in that loss and honoring that loss and honoring the person. Spend time telling stories instead of going, oh my God, how do I pay these bills? Oh my God, where are the bills? who do I even call for this? All those questions that if you don't, I don't know how to get into this laptop because I don't know my dad's password. How do I do it? Those are all really important things that are crippling if you don't have the information.
Mm.
So,
Where,
yeah.
where can someone find your book?
It is on Amazon. And because of the way Amazon works, we have like 50 reviews, and we've even hit the bestseller on Amazon. But until you have, this is what they say, until you have 100 reviews, that you don't fall into the algorithm. So everything has to be very specific. If you put "where is the key to the safe," it probably won't come up, because the book is "Where's the key to the safe?" So on Amazon, and then the workbook you have to put "Where's the key to the safe?" workbook. They won't come up together. It's weird.
Okay.
That's Amazon's little quirky things until supposedly when you hit that magic 100 number, it'll start populating their stuff. But yeah, thank you.
In everything that you have experienced, if you could go back and talk to Pam the day after John passed, you get to keep everything you've learned. What would you tell her?
Ooh, the first thing that popped into my head was, take a deep breath, girl. Just take a deep breath. Like, we can do this, because it felt impossible at the time. And my kids are now 16, 19, 23, and 26. So whatever that was, they were 12 to 22, I guess, when John died. So very different stages and whatever. That's what your priority is making sure that they are having the space to grieve and being heard and feeling seen, and just supporting them, while also having to go to the bank and shut this down and shut that down and do all these things. So I think, what would I say? Take a deep breath. Like, that's it. Like, none of this has to be done in this moment, like immediately. The focus is on the kids, yourself. Take the time you need, ask for help, assign people. Like, can you please go take care of this for me? I'm not one to ask for help ever, but that is a big thing I learned. Like, I cannot do this by myself. I cannot some days even get in the shower. So please go pick up my child at school. Like, get help, ask for help, and take it when it's offered, because everybody wants to help anyway. Give them a way to do it. So that would be my number one thing, because I resisted that for sure.
Thank you. I have asked you a lot of questions, especially now that you're a budding podcaster. Is there anything that you'd like to ask me?
Oh my gosh, I have a million questions. I don't know if
maybe I'll make it to the podcast.
You will definitely. I just love. I've been on a few podcasts now as a guest because of the book, and it's been so fun, like connecting and meeting people. And I feel like I learned something new from every person, which is like kind of my goal in life. Is every encounter I want to learn something new. I would say that to you. Like, what was a turning point for you when you lost your husband? Where was your turning point to say, you know what, I can live this life again. I can find joy. And then, when you felt compelled to get your message out into the world.
That is a good question. Thank you. Actually, the conversation to live again started before Mark died.
Okay.
There was, his family had a long history of heart conditions. So he prepared me and was very, hate that he was right, the idea that he didn't see himself living past 55. And that being the case, he wanted to make sure that I was prepared economically, spiritually, physically. So we had a lot of conversations about my life in his absence. So then he wound up being right. And I'm like, it was worth every conversation, because oftentimes I speak to people and there's a lot of guilt that they hold, and about the idea of continuing living, the idea of laughing or joy. But I had his approval, the conversation. Sometimes people have to go back and reinvent what that discussion would look like with their loved one. We had that conversation to the extent that our oldest daughter actually overheard some of the conversation. So now, years later, Mark, her dad, has passed. Her mom is dating. She doesn't have to go, well, what would dad have thought? And I know I'm very fortunate to have that experience. And my husband died of a massive heart attack. We were on vacation. It wasn't as if there was a lengthy sickness that we would have had time to cross over into some of those conversations. But I'm a talker, so we talked about a lot of different things. And I will encourage people to have the hard conversation whether it's with your children, whoever it is you're with, because there are people listening to this conversation that support people who are dealing with profound grief. And the burden that is lifted by that is huge. But also for the people that never had the opportunity to have that conversation, I recommend sitting down at a table, write your loved one a letter about the things that you have guilt piling up or feeling difficult. Let that letter sit. Come back a day or two or whatever later, move the letter to a different part of the table, a different chair, and write what your loved one would have written to you in that response. You know them well enough to have a sense of what they would have responded. It's an exercise, but it can provide closure. It can provide a sense of relief and just letting that go and being able to live that, because oftentimes people don't talk about the difficult things, and we did, and that made it easier for me. So that was helpful.
That's really an amazing gift that he gave you. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody knowing family history. I've never heard of anybody proactively doing that. He's amazing. Wow.
He was.
Wow.
And I think the second part of your question was telling my story or the nonprofit that I started. It actually, I have remarried, and my chapter 2 husband had a cousin that passed. And I connected with the widow, and she had posted something on Facebook about it being her husband's first birthday. And I was like, ugh.
Ugh.
I will never tell another widow I understand how you feel, because how you feel is unique to you and your unique relationship with your spouse. So I don't know how it feels for you to miss John in that most intimate way, but I definitely have a concept from my own lived experience.
Yeah.
And I'd reached out and asked her, did she want to talk? She said, well, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And I was like, well, you can talk now. And she called me, and we were on the phone way past my regular bedtime.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew what it was like to be in that space where you didn't have to qualify how you felt and you could speak freely. And when I got off the phone with her, I felt like God was prompting me to do something on a larger scale, to be able to support people, to create a space for community networking in the widowhood. And my mom, who at that time, I want to say was in her late 70s, had a podcast talking about things she had learned in her life. And the podcast, the nonprofit, creating space for people to connect. And we just had our first butterfly release ceremony. We have a church that's donated land to have a memorial garden. We're having a retreat in Atlanta. Hopefully get to meet you while we're there in December. And when I go this year, actually, I'm doing every Wednesday where I'm sharing journal prompts from my first year and a half after Mark passed. And as I'm reflecting, because really don't remember all that.
Exactly.
I can see that the foundation, Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, is leveraging some of those same principles that I used in my own grief journey. So that is how I got here.
That is amazing. It's so incredible when you think about. I say this to people. They say, "How do you do all the things you do?" Like everybody says, I'm the busiest person they know, but I get a lot accomplished as well. And I literally you say God, I say spirit, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's all the same person, concept, thing, right? I literally just say, you stay open to what the messages that's supposed to be sent to you. If you stay open to it, and I say it every single day, like, just help me stay open, whatever the direction I'm supposed to go in, I'll do everything I can to stay open, and then I will follow the path to take it, to take me for biggest impact, for greatest good, and that's literally my guiding spirit too. And it sounds like the same for you. And I think that people that do the things that we do, we maybe just are consciously more open to, I say, receiving the downloads. I get downloads, I get thoughts that just pop into my brain that I'm like, oh, it's like the Widows Who Whine thing. I was like, oh, that's what I need to do. It's like suddenly it strikes me, and I kind of spin obsessively until I vet it out, but then it's there and I just make it happen, So I don't know. I think it's a beautiful thing, but I think we're all capable of it. We just have to be consciously open to receive.
There is a lot to say about choice, because I know everyone travels this grief journey very differently. It is a daily decision to choose to be a participant in my own experience and not just sit down and quit and just let that be the last thing of my life.
Yeah.
This was the most difficult experience in my whole life. I was there when Mark had this massive heart attack. I don't want anyone to think like, well, they look so happy and they're just doing stuff. This is a daily intentional step to be here on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And it's worth the intentional steps to me.
It is, because you can, I literally had this conversation yesterday too. You can choose, like, and you do, and sometimes you do have to choose every day. And sometimes it's not as big a choice, right? Sometimes you can train yourself to just naturally go towards happiness and joy. But especially in those early days, you're like, what am I choosing today? Do I want to stay?
Mark's birthday was just a couple of weeks ago, and it was hot garbage. So there was a choice to either sit in the house and just be miserable. And some friends convinced me to go to the beach. I live in Virginia, and watch the sunrise and think of renewal and a new day and hope, and to create that. And then I spent the rest of the day hanging out with our son. And I have a Jeep Wrangler, and we went and found different murals and took pictures and stuff like that. And we laughed and just enjoyed that. But this is 8 years later. It's still a choice.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? And people say, oh, I guess she's moved on, or when are you going to move on? When are you going to get over
my
it?
children will get married. My children will have monumental events in their life. Their dad will not
A gaping hole. Yeah.
That doesn't change.
Doesn't change. It doesn't change.
So I'm going to say something to our listeners, and then I would like you to close up. Maybe there's something we didn't cover, or something you want to make sure that you get to talk about. Okay. And I want to say thank you for this conversation.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing.
I am so glad that you found us and was able to participate in this conversation. I am sorry for your loved one that has allowed you to be here, but I'm glad you found us. And I look forward to seeing you next week. So,
and I'll just close out by saying something that goes along with widowhood. You know, it goes back to that whole, people ask me all the time, how can I support widows? What do I do as a friend to someone? And I say, you know, obviously in those early days, you support them and help them out when they need to be like held up, literally at times. But then when you're moving on with your life, because everybody does, support her in her rebirth, because this is a rebirth. We're moving to a chapter, we're moving to a path we weren't planning on taking. And it's we quite literally have to reinvent ourselves. So support the rebirth without judgment, and just be there to cheer her on and lift her up as she's navigating this new path. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.